Welcome to the Caribbean Property Investing Podcast, where we share real-life experiences for successful Caribbean property entrepreneurs. Learn about their successes, challenges, and strategies to help you create your plan for financial freedom. Now let's get started.
Bank of St. Lucia Visa credit card for everyday people, everyday moments.
To ruminate, to create your ultimate living space. And at Courts, you'll find what you need. Choose from our wide range of furniture, electronics, and accessories to complete your space. We're here and ready to assist. Give us a call to place your order. Shop online at shopcourts.com or visit us in store. So ruminate at Courts, bringing value home.
Welcome to episode 29 of the Caribbean Property Investing Podcast. Like the young people would say, it's been a minute, but it's all good. Today we have yet another exciting episode for you, an informative episode, and an exciting guest. Today we're really going to look at a real life scenario of a potential investor in the Caribbean, and as a developer or someone interested in embarking on the property investment journey or investing journey, we'll get to find out what are some of the things that we probably should be considering with the investment. We're probably going to explore some of the expectations, some of the requirements, and just a general conversation on what a potential investor is looking for when we as developers looking for people to help with our financing or a partner in our investing business. So without a doubt, allow me to welcome Brian Silvestri to the show. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you, Ron. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. I've heard all the other shows, so it's very exciting to be here with you.
So Brian would have called me Ron. That's my middle name for those persons wondering what that name was. I've known Brian for some time, and we've spoken about doing a project, a joint project, for quite some time. And I thought that this was a good opportunity for us to share some of that knowledge, some of the things that we are considering as we go closer or get closer to that eventual joint venture or partnership. But Brian, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Brian Silvestri. I'm a real estate broker in New York City, specifically in Manhattan. And I've been in that business for 22 years. And now I started to kind of segue a little bit more into investing. So I think that's how, as you mentioned, I've known you for many years, and I've been following your rapid ascent and trajectory and all the many ventures that you've had, and investing and developing and hearing all your successes. And so that's where I think we started to have the conversation about us kind of doing something together as well.
What Brian didn't tell you is that he is the A1 excellent salesman. Actually, I did work with him for some time, and he taught me a lot about sales. I don't think I can be anywhere close to the salesman that he is. Brian, why don't you tell
the other way around?
Yeah. Why don't you tell us about your first foray into real estate on a personal level?
Well, I think my true first foray into real estate ownership was just like a lot of other of your listeners, which was just buying my own homes. And so I started doing that more than, I would say, let's see, more about 20 years ago. I bought my first place, a small 1-bedroom apartment. And then from there, I sold that. The price went up, and I bought a studio in Manhattan. And then I bought another studio because at the time, we're talking about 2004, financing was very, very easy. You called up the bank on the phone, and they asked you, "Oh, how much do you make?" And you told them, and they said, "Oh, great, you have a mortgage approval." And it was literally like that easy. So I bought a couple of studios, and then eventually sold both of those and got a bigger apartment. So that was like my first foray into ownership, and now very recently I had my kind of return to investment real estate.
Yeah, Brian. As you were speaking about the your initial journey into real estate, I'm thinking of, at what point do you decide, I want to do more than just my home. I want to become an investor. What are some of the thoughts that you have that lead you to start considering that and start putting plans in motion to go for that extra unit?
Well, actually, what had happened is more recently is something happened almost by accident. I was with my hat on as a broker. I was approaching people that I thought maybe would be interested in selling, and I came across a gentleman, and he said, "Well, actually, I'm not interested in selling, but I'm going to be renovating this house." And I said, "Okay, no problem." I said, if you have any questions or you need any assistance, sometimes people like to know what type of finishes to put in a property or how to lay out an apartment. And so I said, feel free to reach out to me because I've had 22 years of experience of renting these type of places and selling these type of places. So he said, okay, great. And then he did call me a couple months later, and he said, I just want to describe to you, this is a situation that I'm in. I have a lender who will loan money, and they've also arranged for a contractor for me. So right away, the red flags were waving, and I said to him, I don't think that's a really good idea to have a lender recommending you to the contractor. It's a definite conflict of interest. So we started talking about it, and he also felt that it wasn't things were happening that he wasn't sure how to deal with. So I started to actually just try to help him. The idea was just trying to help him. And so I had a few more conversations with him, and I said, maybe what I can do is I can look for another contractor for you, or I can look for another lender for you, perhaps even an investor. And so after several conversations, he said, a lot of people want to invest with me. I get calls all the time, people that want to do joint ventures with me. He said, but I don't want to do a partnership with any of them. He said, I want to do a partnership with you. And I said, really? Me? Okay. Well, let's see how that works. And I had never done anything like that before. So I just said, okay, yeah, we can do that. Sure. And then I just listened to what his needs were, and he needed money to be infused. He needed a reputable contractor. So I found him a very reputable contractor. I found also for us a potential lender, and we're working on that loan pretty much as we speak. I've done all of the legwork as the only person who's on site. I'm here in New York. He's in California. The property's in New York. He has another partner who's also given in some capital, and she's in California as well. So I put in a lot of labor into it to earn my percentage. And it's already, a couple months back, it was already transferred over to an LLC, and I'm a 25% owner. So at this point, we're just waiting on, we have approved plans, and we're just waiting on the the loan to be approved, and so that hopefully in the next month we could start with the construction.
In that JV, a joint venture, what are you looking to come out of it with? Either you get experience, 25% shareholding. Are you looking for a cash outcome if they are trying to exit with a sale, or are they planning on keeping it for long-term rental or short-term rental?
Yeah, so he's planning on. He never wanted to sell it. Always the idea was that he wants it for a rental. So so my benefit from it is twofold. Is obviously experience. So the learning experience of it on the one hand, and then also to add to your resume, because then that makes all of the ventures going forward much easier, both with other partners or just with lenders, to have already had some experience in the field. And then down the road, what we'll do is after the construction is completed, I'll rent out the apartments and then we'll refinance it. Once it's refinanced, okay, the way I calculate it, we'll have enough money to basically get rid of the first loan, and at that point we'll have a positive cash flow. So I'll be in a building with a positive cash flow, a lot of tax benefits to it, because I'm a real estate professional and I'm the only one in New York. So some of those benefits can only go to me as well. On top of it, down the road, we'll refinance again. And on that next refinance, let's say 5-6 years down the road, there'll be more cash coming out. At that point, he could buy me out. And so that'll be.
I can tell you for us, our Caribbean listeners, the constant refinancing and taking money out is not something that is done often, if ever at all. But for the benefit of our listeners, a simple explanation of that scenario is you refinance when the property is revalued and appreciated more than the mortgage. So let's say you got a mortgage of $500,000, and 3 years down the line you revalue the property. It's at $800,000. Some people actually can take out $300,000 from that property. Only if it only works out, Brandon, you can correct me if I'm right. It only works out if the rent increases proportionately, and that rent can still cover that $800,000 new mortgage that you have now.
Yes, exactly. And then on top of it, what happens is over time, your tenants are paying down your principal as well. So you'll have equity in that, and then as well as the equity in the appreciation, and your rents are going to go up as well. So yes, that's correct. And the first refinance is done because we're doing a construction loan or a private money loan, and those, I don't know if you have that in St. Lucia or how that works, but here is usually for a 12 to 24 month term, and those are higher interest rates. And then after the construction is done and you rent it out, you can put a more traditional 30-year mortgage on it.
And typically, what's the difference between the traditional bank rate versus the private money rate? Roughly, what's the difference?
So private money rate would be anywhere from 8 to like 11%. Okay, with usually 2 points. So that and then when we refinance it out, probably in the low to mid 4s would be the rate, and it'd be a 30-year.
Now, some of those rates that you're saying, for most of us, not until about 2 years ago, Brian, did we have anything close to 5%. So some of my first project, my mortgage, my rate is 10%, and I tried to fight hard for that because the initial offer by the bank was 12%. It's considered to be corporate, and in the Caribbean, corporate rates are anywhere from 9% onwards. Residential rates are typically between 6 and 8%, but now, dawn of a new day, St. Lucia and other markets, you have 5% and even just below 4.75. It almost seems obscene when in the Caribbean we hear of rates of 2%, 2.5%, and those type of rates. What you've covered there is quite a lot, and I have to try to unpack it, especially when you took something for granted, and that was the sort of agreement in forming the LLC, or for us it would be a limited liability company, which is what an incorporated company or a limited liability company. You guys call it LLC, right? I guess it's the same thing. What you gleaned over there was the intricate kind of agreements between the original investor, the private money lender, and yourself. Can you describe to the audience what are some of the typical precautionary clauses or conditions that are placed in the contract that gives you some measure of protection other than just, okay, you have your shareholding? But even if you have a shareholding, what if as the original investor, I just stop the project, or I wind down the company, or I sell it that property to another company as a minority shareholder? Do you have any say, and how do you protect yourself?
Well, you're talking about the operating agreement.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm not an expert by any means on operating agreements, but what we did is we tried to, as best we could, spell out what everyone's duties and responsibilities would be, and that what everyone's rights would be. So in the operating agreement, because the original owner, who remained the 50% owner in the LLC, he never wanted to sell. So we said if the only way a sale could be brought about is if that particular person decided there would be a sale. So that was one thing that we put in as a way of just protecting him, because he didn't want to sell, and then just kind of delineating and just saying who does what. So, as far as responsibilities of who's deciding everything with the renovation and things like that. So that all goes to me. Even spelling out that when there's taxes that needed to be filed for the LLC, who would be doing it. So I wrote into the operating agreement, my accountant would be the accountant for the LLC. So I think that you try as best you can to just kind of lay out what everyone is doing. And, of course, you have an attorney who will help to kind of cover those blind spots. But, at the same time, you could have all that, but you really need to know who you're partnering up with as well.
And of course, I'm sure there wasn't much debate when selecting or deciding which real estate company would be renting and leasing it out.
Yeah, actually, originally it was just going to be, I'm going to be, I'm going to be taking care of all that. So
Right,
I had
right.
no idea how much work actually all of the stuff that you need to do between, all the many bids, even just for heating and air conditioning systems. I probably have been there to that house, which is only 15 minutes away from where I live, but I probably was there like more than a dozen times with various vendors, and spent each time, a good 30 minutes or so, and a lot of research. And so a lot of it is that kind of stuff. There's a lot of legwork. So I think since, if you're in a position where you're doing that legwork, then there's a lot of research and a lot of stuff.
No, it's worth something, and especially if the investors are not, in the same state or are in close proximity, then your contribution becomes so much more valuable.
Yes.
How do you deal with a scenario where the other two shareholders say, okay, Brand Silvestri Real Estate, obviously you're a partner, but we want a better commission rate for our leasing. We don't want the normal rate. We want you to give us a better rate.
Oh yeah, I don't think we have to worry about that, because usually the rates here for if I was renting something out is like a 1 month fee, and sometimes it's paid by the landlord, sometimes it's paid by the tenant. But yeah, I don't get the impression. Pretty much the good thing about this partnership, like I know we had the conversation yesterday about, I told you my attorney said to me that, partners are for dancing. And I know you had your own take on that, but the good thing is that the other two partners, being that they're out of state, They're very, very, very nice people. They're very grateful. They're always like, "Oh, thank you so much for everything that you're doing," and they let me run with all of the decisions. So they're not asking me like, and that would make it a lot more difficult. Oh, what are we gonna put in the bathroom? What's the color scheme? I want to pick the cabinets. They just gonna let just go ahead, Brian. You do what you got to do. We trust you. And I think that's one of the things that helps it to really work well is when you have that kind of trust.
And everything we're talking about, even though the actual project is in New York, the relationships and the structure is they are universal in terms of what works well. Obviously, there are cultural differences, and obviously they're different. There's a different legislative framework for protection and guidance and the construct of the agreement. But you said something that was very important, and that is the operating agreement. Two things. You spoke about the operating agreement, and in a lot of cases in the Caribbean context, there is trepidation, there is fear, there's reservation about partnerships, especially when it comes to real estate. And one of the key reasons, even for me as well, is the amount of time that your money can be tied up in litigation because of a case brought against you or a disagreement with a partner. You're not quite sure how easily you'll be able to take your money back out to invest it somewhere else, especially if you want to get a return or you depend on that return almost monthly or biannually. So the operating agreement becomes very, 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 very important. And you said where you try to kind of think of or imagine all sorts of potential conflict or areas of that require clarification, and you try to spell it out in the agreement with the guidance of the attorney. The line you used earlier about partners are only for dancing. Generally, a lot of people discourage partnerships. And I was speaking to Brian earlier this week, and I reminded him of a phrase used to me by a friend, but the father of a friend of mine in Grenada. And he said, partnerships, I don't support partnerships. All partnerships become leaky ships. They all leak and they all sink. And so do it on your own. I am not a proponent of that. I do agree, though, that perhaps the most important element of a partnership is the partner himself or herself, and how they understand each other's objectives and how they complement each other's skill sets. I do recognize that when you're looking for financing or funding, you might not get someone you can sing kumbaya with, but hopefully if you have the same objective or you understand each other's objectives and they are recorded and catered for in the operating agreement, then you should have some measure of safety. Of course, as I told you, my main concern is how do you exit, which brings us now to the Caribbean context. Those persons would have listened to other previous podcasts. I've always said that in as much as persons may think that property investing is risky, one way I try to mitigate my risk is having some almost, hard and fast characteristics of the investment of the site. It must, I know it's not always possible, but for me, I believe in having a sea view. I believe when all else fails, you sit on your balcony and whoever is in there, whichever tenant is in there occupying it, they enjoy a sea view. Obviously, close to the developing area of the country, close to transportation, close to hospitals, supermarkets, restaurants, shopping. These things I do not compromise. And so as a result, we may have to pay a little more for the property. And I always believe in having multifamily units, which allows us to maximize on the potential of the land and the density of the land. So I will never build a single house and rent it again. Never. So having said that, Brian, I came to you and we're speaking about, potentially doing something together. Tell us about the appetite for New Yorkers, Americans, about potentially investing in the Caribbean, whether it's a second home, whether it's a property for rent or a property for flipping? What's the general appetite from your experience as an agent of person that you've spoken to and the relative attractiveness of the Caribbean?
Well, I would say that having had a lot of conversations from the perspective of the person that was looking for the investment, I've had different meetings with people, and I think that, number one is that they, want to see, obviously if you're having the conversation, there's already a relationship there. So I think that that's number one. Does the person have a relationship with you? How strong is that relationship? So do they like you? Do they trust you? I think that's the number one thing. And then I think from there, I think people are also looking like for a track record. Okay. So like when you and I first started having the conversations, like I've been just as a party on the sideline, just hearing about all the things that you've been doing over the years. So that, starts to establish with someone, oh, wow, he's really doing great. He's doing all of these different projects, so I think, where, the track record of someone is important. And I think when you're first starting out, that can be a little bit of a challenge. And that's where, maybe getting into some of these deals somewhat for the experience and maybe doing more work and more, of the, the boots on the ground type of stuff. Maybe that's where, you start to earn a little bit of, what you later on would reap. As far as just in general, like people, I think investors always, they're interested in looking for where there's a return, but they're also generally like they can be very short-sighted, almost like the horse with the blinders. So I find that a lot of investors, they have a certain template that they follow, and a lot of times they don't deviate from that. So here in New York, they're used to get me a house that's vacant and that I can renovate. So how much do I have to pay? How much is the renovation? How much is it worth afterwards? So for them to go outside of the area, to go outside to another state or to another country or to the Caribbean, they're going to be looking for a larger rate of return, but at the same time, they're going to be looking for someone that they can partner with, that they can trust, and that has that track record.
Okay, and in terms of first thing I want to say, when we talk about track record and having done stuff, a large proportion of our audience gets scared away. And it's important, as we've always said, you have to start somewhere. You may not always start, you may not be able to start on a big project, but start with something small. Start with your own project, add a little room on the side, do a renovation, but you have to start somewhere. So it doesn't matter if you have no experience, and even if you have not any experience and you're starting at the intermediate level, make sure you get some education. Make sure you read up on books. Make sure you listen to podcasts. Make sure you speak to, don't be afraid. Make sure you speak to people who have done it in the past. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. I have never, ever approached a developer or a property investor and asked questions about the project and I've gotten a cold shoulder. I never have. I don't know if there's a quality in those type of people, like to talk about the projects. I don't know, maybe they want to share their pain, Brian, but I've never, ever gotten a cold shoulder in any country I've been to, in the Bahamas, Antigua, Grenada, anywhere I've been to and I've asked someone on a project, they've always shared information, So that's what we recommend, to do that. So in terms of what I would be offering someone like you, my model is no more than, well, an average 4 units, Brian. I'm looking at spending no more than 1.2 million EC on the land and the building, completely finished. So I've always told my listeners, you look for property, ideally no more than 200,000 EC. and then the building can go anywhere from 800,000 to 1 million, and that's in the middle. That's intermediate. Yeah, you can start smaller. You can do two. Maybe the land is still going to cost you maybe between 150 and $200,000. So if you do two, I always recommend do a concrete roof or do the upper floors first and on pillars, so you can go at the bottom after. So okay, so I'm approaching you with this proposal. Typically, the structure or the construct of the agreement, we form a company, and in St. Lucia, once you are a non-resident of the CARICOM or the island, you cannot have more than 49% shareholding of the company, and you'd be okay with 49%.
The percentage is really, it's all open. It's just, depends on, what's the investment, and then what's the anticipated return. So, I think here in the States, I've seen, depending on what the amount of the investment, I've seen splits go 30-70, 60-40, 50-50. A lot of it is can be negotiated depending on, if I'm approaching an investor here and I want them to put in some equity, put in some cash into something that I want to do, I will be more flexible in terms of making the percentages very attractive for them than maybe I would be in 5 years from now, when I already have a longer track record, and then I could have more people that are interested in investing. But also, just to comment on one of the things you said, is like starting somewhere. I mean, all of this can sound very overwhelming, but yeah, it's important just, yes, to start somewhere. Do your research, but start somewhere. I mean, even for myself, a few months ago, we did a renovation of our kitchen, and I wound up just by luck, just being here day in and day out and watching them do what they were doing. And it's really amazing if you've never been party to that, where you've seen construction going on or renovation going on. You do learn a lot. So, a lot of what you say now and on your previous podcast, where you tell people, you got that space underneath the house, and then make that into another apartment and get the rental income. So those are the places where you can start, and then with each experience, you'll grow and you'll learn and you'll keep developing. And nobody starts doing 8 units, 10 units, 30 units. People start by doing little projects, maybe a part of a house, then a house, and then maybe a 2 units, maybe a 3 units, and usually people will build up step by step. So it's great advice that you're giving the listeners.
Well, I mean, well said. And generally, from speaking to other investors, do you get a sense of the ideal kind of number of partners they're looking for, they're comfortable with? So, like you. So we would do that deal, two of us. Do you think people would take one more or two more? What's your sense of that? How many partners?
Well, I would just, like in the time that we've been working on this, and we try to take on, like, I have a business partner, and then our idea was really only to take on like one other partner. I mean, the more people that you have, the more chances that you're going to have, conflict. Like they say, they have the expression, too many chefs in the kitchen, so the less partners, the better. I know that can definitely be a challenge, because it's easier to get a little money from a bunch of people than a big chunk of money from one man or one woman. So, but when you have 5-6 people involved, my business has been mainly brokerage, and I have a client that I was considering to maybe buy his property, and he said to me, he was asking me questions about another partnership that he had, and he had 3 or 4, I think he had 5 or 6 people. And when he first did it, he was getting a little money from everybody, but over time, now he wants to buy these people out, and so he's got to go to each and every one and try to buy them out. So, so you might not have a choice in the beginning. You might have to bring in, a few people, 4, 5, or 6 people, to be able to get even a small project done. But I think ideally, the less the better. Yeah.
I know that the more we talk about property, it almost seems like we're going down a rabbit hole, and some people saying, "Oh my God, that's just too much for me, too much for me, too much for me." But what I use a tag at some of the at the end of some of the episodes that we all need to live somewhere. So you cannot run away from real estate. You must sleep somewhere. Do you want to be paying a mortgage all your life and not get anything in return? Never own it, or do you want something that maybe later on, if you have kids, you can use as equity to get some financing for them to do other things in life, or even to take care of yourself if you fall ill. So that's really why we're passionate about it, because I know some people say it can be too much. So now, Brian, so we're having a real live conversation, a real live a kind of exchange of the process of getting an investor. So for me, I've identified the property. I've gotten an estimate, and that'll be my input of the plans. We agree on the plans already. We've got an estimate of how much the joints are going to cost, the filings, everything, as well as getting an estimate of the company structure. Typically, it if you go through a private lawyer, it's like $4,000. But in St. Lucia, I don't know if any of the other islands have that facility. And by the way, I love my lawyers. Brickstone Law, that's my guys. But if you don't have good friends and you don't necessarily want to go to a lawyer, you could go to the registry of companies, and the government in St. Lucia has a facility that all you pay is stamp duty. You can get a company incorporated. What they don't tell you though is that you don't have the articles of incorporation, you don't have some of the other important documents that you actually need to operate. So there is still value in going through to a lawyer to get it done. And one of our past podcast guests, Chrissy says she used the entire school network to get discounts on all of the services, from lawyer, architect, evaluator. So don't be afraid to go to your network and ask for discounts. Ask for discounts. So I would do all of that on my end. And typically what I would be looking for is a cash injection from my investor. The shareholding is going to be proportionate to the overall value of the completed product. So if we say land and building is going to cost us 1.2, you and I will have a discussion as to what we think will be the finished value, because the cost to actually build, the cost of the inputs, is not always the actual value at the end. Typically, it may be only 90% because you have gained equity in that 1 year of construction. So normally the finished product is a little more than the cost of the inputs. So let's say we end up at 1.3, even if we have a total value spend or cost or loan of 1.2. So then what we would do is whatever injection you will put, it would be as a percentage of that 1.3. And that's how I would work out the value of your share in the company. And everything we do going forward, we split cost and profit on that shareholding. What's your understanding, or what would be, I guess, your thoughts around that kind of structure?
Yeah, I think that's kind of similar to the things that we work on over here, where if I am, let's say, this just a sponsor and I'm doing all the work, then I might not be putting in cash initially, and we're dividing it up in some kind of way, depending on what the other partners are doing. But I think at the end of the day, it's just the numbers, all the numbers just have to make sense. So you look at, from the standpoint of a person that's putting in the equity, is you're looking at, okay, well, I'm putting in X. How long is it going to take to sell, and what do I get at the end of the day? And what's my return? What's my percentage? If the percentage looks like it makes sense, it's better, or at least as good as something that you'd be able to do here in the States, then I think it becomes very, very attractive. The good thing about these type of scenarios where you buy and you fix something and you resell it is that you're not dealing with tenants and you don't have those issues. So so I think that you just from the person that's putting in the equity, you're just looking at how much do I put in, and how long, and what's my rate of return. So if my rate of return is very high, then the percentages make sense.
Yeah, and I've always felt very, very conscious of the risk of I guess a foreign investor. And so the way I would structure it is that we form the company, and the company would buy the land. Yeah, the company would buy the land. And I would typically use the injection from that partner. So any money that you would give me for your 49% or your 30%, the first thing we would do is use that to buy the land. And the land belongs to the company. And so you have, even from step one, Brian, you have some kind of security, because whatever happens, the company owns the land and you're a shareholder in the company. Then now we go to the bank. Now, track record helps when you're with the bank. On my side of the world, I don't know if it's like that in the Bahamas or some more developed Caribbean islands, but typically in the Windward Islands, the bank does not accept rental revenue as security for a loan repayment. And if they do, they are going to discount it significantly. They're going to discount it as high as 65%. So say you're getting $1,000 in rent, the bank is only going to recognize $350 as your contribution to that loan payment. And so the banks then would ask you in your personal capacity to secure the loan payment by doing a salary deduction. And I know
how does that work?
doing a salary deduction. So what they would do when you go and sign for the loan, even as a company, I would still get a job letter and sign a salary assignment to the bank. So every month when I get paid, my company pays the bank for my personal salary for that commercial loan. And in as much as there is supposed to be a separation between the company and the directors, when it comes to securing a loan, I found that in the Caribbean, loans are doubly, and if there's what we call triply secured. So you're more likely to get the loan if you can give a salary assignment in addition to having signed leases by potential tenants. And so at this point in time, what I prefer to do and what I recommend is, Brian, we sell. Let's say we do 4 units, we sell a couple of those units to significantly reduce the loan or totally wipe out the loan. And then we have 2 cash-free flowing units to go in the future. And so unless we then decide to sell those units and then pay off the partners or the joint venture partner, we keep the rental income going, and then we take out all of the carrying costs, whether it's insurance, maintenance, landscaping, garbage disposal, any cost of the normal wear and tear. And then that revenue that we have, we can agree typically to put a portion in it on the side for contingency, and then we can pay each other out. Now, there's a significant difference in some of the products offered, Brian, in the US, in the UK, in Australia, and in the Caribbean. I've listened to more than 1,000 podcasts from all over the world on property. And to me, Utopia sounds like interest-only loans, where you only pay the interest. A lot of European property investors and some American property investors, the loan, there are loans that you can only pay the interest on the loan, and they live off the rent money. And so in 10 years, when the property cycle supposedly doubles, then they refinance and pull money out. But for us in the Caribbean, your loan is always your principal and your interest, so it's a lot higher. So you don't have a lot of money as extra free cash flow.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I know
Yeah.
that's a
Well,
lot.
yeah. Yes, they're. Yeah, I think there are definitely interest-only products here in the States, as you mentioned. But yeah, I think back to when I was a broker just before the financial crisis here, and one of the things that happens is that in our real estate office, mortgage brokers used to visit us, and they would solicit us to refer them potential clients. And I remember when they started coming out with some of these products for the first time, there was interest only was the first round, and then there was adjustable rate mortgages, and then there was mortgages that you're not even paying the interest. You're, called negative amortization, so you're not even paying up the interest. The interest is accruing, and you're betting on the appreciation. And then there was mixtures of choose what you want. You can pay the interest, you can pay principal and interest, and you can pay
Oh
not
my
even the interest.
God.
So
Wow.
when they were proposing these things, I said, "Oh boy, this is not good. This is not going to be good because I don't know how it is in the Caribbean, but here for, wow, I would say more than 30 years, credit cards have been a thing. And especially credit card debt. And so how would a country where the average person has a pretty significant amount of credit card debt, how would they possibly be able to decide which one of those options they're going to take and to pick the right one? Because back in the old days, principal and interest, so you knew you had that store of value. Make that payment every year for 30 years, and then after 30 years, you own that house, free and clear. And so all of those creative products, that's what led to the financial crisis. So yeah, so I mean, I think that, yeah, principal and interest sounds a lot more reasonable. And I think that again, it's all numbers. So I think that if you or any of the listeners are proposing like a partnership with someone, whether it be a person, a foreigner such as myself, or just someone within the Caribbean or in St. Lucia, I think you have to look at what they say. Every person listens to the same radio station. It's WIIFM. What's in it for me? So
I like that.
that's what
Yeah.
everyone's looking for. The fact that, oh, you're going to build this much units, and we're going to do this and that and all that. Okay, that's all nice, but what do I get? How much what's my part that I got to put in? What's my time? And then what's the projection, and what's my rate of return? So that's what, I think if you focus on that and focus on, like, how can you build the value for the other people, then I think your listeners will be going down the right path.
So let me ask you, for you, in that type of investment, and I know that that type of investment can range from, both equity investment, the overall capital cost of the project, shareholding. You could have so many variables, but for you, if you were to invest in a joint venture in the Caribbean, what type of return would you think you'd be looking for? Minimum, what for it to be worth your while?
Yeah, I think that it would have to be definitely have to be like north of 20%, something like that, because that's about what I'm looking at over here. You know, right now we're in a process. I think I mentioned to you that we're refinancing our primary residence, and I don't know if you can do the same thing in St. Lucia, but when here in the States, when you own your property for a certain number of years, there's appreciation. And as long as you can carry a larger payment with your job, you could potentially pull out cash out of your primary residence, and you can then take that cash, whether it's a little, it's a lot, whatever it is, and now you have a little bit of seed money to get started on something. So for me, with the availability of capital and loans here in the States, Um, that's what I'm looking at, because I'm looking at some projects that once we complete our refinance, that should pay me like about 20% or maybe more even, you know.
And so we kind of wrapping up now.
Mhm.
We spoke about the partnerships. We spoke about what are some of the key things that you or an investor like yourself will be looking at, from looking at from a Caribbean joint venture setup, track record, personal relationship, and of course the ability to do what you say you're going to do, and of
Mhm.
course the opportunity, being minimum 20%. Um, People listening to this podcast, what advice you would have for them? Where do I find somebody like you? If I didn't know you before, where do I find somebody like you? So I'm in Barbados and I have this property and I want to attract a joint venture partner. How do I get somebody like you?
Well, I think that, it's really all about, building your network. And, one of the things that I do is, I'm a real estate broker by trade. So a few years ago, you go to these meetings where you network with people, and for me that wasn't really always, that felt very forced to me. So I decided, actually, to return to playing tennis. And because my thought was, if I go to play tennis in a tennis club or something like that, I would be running into people that probably, were looking to buy or sell real estate. It's thinking about the person that you're looking to meet and where you could meet them and how that intersects with the true person that you are. So it might be, that your listeners have some other interest. Maybe it's cricket, or maybe it's, art, or whatever that is. We're all coming into contact with tons of people on a daily basis. So I think it's just a matter of really thinking about, like, what type of person that you'd like to meet. You might not have as many, foreign nationals coming through your door, but you might have other folks that are that live in the country, that are high net worth individuals, that, or just might have some money that they want to invest. I mean, people are always, somebody passes away and then they have to sell a property, and now all of a sudden they have this cash and they're maybe looking to do something with it. So right there, it could be someone that you look to work with. So yeah, so I would say you have to really just think about the places that you might be able to go, or even just put your antenna up, so to speak, and just start thinking about and just listening for, those cues. Someone selling property, someone that's, maybe got a new job. You think about all the professional people that you have in your country, doctors and nurses and professors. And so if these people are your friends and you have a relationship with them and they start seeing that you're doing things, those people are looking for ways to invest their money. And if you have that relationship, that could be a good potential, because they don't have the time. They're not going to go out and do a renovation of a property in St. Lucia or build 2 units. They're working all the time, but they have the income.
Brian, I'm listening to you say what you're saying there, and I feel strange a bit, because believe it or not, it is still taboo to talk about money in many Caribbean islands, to ask for money,
Mm-hmm.
even from family and friends. And I think it's going to change, but it still is not something I think most people are comfortable with. However,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, if you have an established entity and you're doing stuff already, you have a track record, whether it's one apartment or two, a renovation, an extension, that will give you a little more credibility. And of course, it comes down to character. It comes down to
Mm-hmm.
character, and it comes down to um, the quality of the contract, the the details of the operating agreement or the shareholders agreement. But even while you say it, it still feels uncomfortable actually going to people and asking them for money. But there are a number of investment clubs, there are a number of angel investment groups in the Caribbean, large islands, Jamaica, Trinidad, and that's going to change. But yeah, maybe the first place we start with, Brian, like you said, friends and family, and hopefully that they can trust you, and it's not just asking for money, but being backed by a solid contract with clauses that will speak to eventualities or unpleasant eventualities. Brian, I leave the closing comments to you. Anything you'd like to share for for persons watching, persons listening to you? They haven't seen actually your shirt yet. I think your shirt has something cool on it. Maybe you want to share that, but I leave the last word to you. What advice you have for anybody listening to this or would have watched this podcast?
I think that, well, first of all, one of the things that's really wonderful, that's so different than was, 10, 15, 20 years ago, was that you have all of this information that's out there at people's fingertips. People such as yourself that are putting out like amazing content and, putting it out there for free for people to have something that they can learn from and to get them started. I think that's really amazing. I think first of all is take advantage of all that stuff. There's just so many great podcasts and great information out there that you could start to learn. And I think it's like you kind of always you say, you got to get started somewhere. So start somewhere, even if it's small, even if it's doing a renovation of a bathroom or kitchen, or like you've said in other podcasts, to go and put that other apartment in your, to make your one unit into 2 units. So now all of a sudden you're a landlord, and now you have a little bit of extra money every month, to play around with. I mean, that's something that's accessible to everyone. You get that little bit extra money, and I think you told the story in one of the other podcasts about, and so I do listen. So
I do.
The rent is $700. The mortgage only cost me $200, so I made $500 in addition. So are you serious? Does it really work that way? And it does. And I think that even for the folks that's not available, just think about ways that you can just get started somewhere. Maybe maybe you go and get that real estate license, and you start maybe you start doing a little bit of real estate as an agent, and so you start to learn. I mean, that's the reason why I got started 22 years ago. Was I wanted to take a course, something to learn, and whatever that course was, it was canceled. And I said, oh, I'll do this real estate course because one day I'll probably own my own place, so I should learn a little bit about it. Well, that was 22 years ago, so you never know. Like you say, you maybe you just get yourself in that space. Maybe you start to work with somebody who's a handyman. You start to learn a little bit about construction. And you don't have to, I understand it's very, here it's also kind of weird to be, you're not hard selling your brother and your cousin and your aunt with you. But, when you tell people, one of the things that I love to do is I live in a big building. There's 19 floors. We ride the elevator all the time. People, you see them in the elevator, you talk, and they see you, dressed up or something. And they say, oh, wow, you're very dressed up today. And I say, well, I have to, once in a while, I got to sell some real estate. And they say, oh, you're a broker? And I say, yeah, I'm a broker. And they say, oh, I might need to talk to you about something. And that's how things happen, so people see you maybe carrying building supplies to your renovation, and then they're like, oh, what's going on? So, oh, well, I have this, house down the block, and I'm renovating it. And especially when you get a little bit of a success, share that story. It's just you're talking to your friends and your network, and you're just telling them, oh, I bought this little piece of land. And then, like a bunch of your other guests have talked about, I bought a land because I was going to build a house. And then I built this house, and then somebody wanted to buy it, so I sold it to them. So I went and I did. Now I'm doing it again. So you tell those stories, and then people will just get naturally very curious to say, wow, what are you doing? Maybe I want to be involved in that. And they'll be asking you. So if you just, start wherever you are. Don't worry if you're, if like you say, if all this talk about joint ventures and operating agreements sounds like, another language. Wherever you are, start. And if you start and you just, you build yourself up. I mean, I listen to the same podcast. That's how people started that now own portfolios with thousands of units. They started with one house, and they learned. So.
All right. Thanks a lot, Brian. We want to give a special shout out to your supporting cast, Roger, Rafa, and Gigi. For those of you watching the video edition of the podcast, you're going to have a treat. Some really nice faces popping in and out, in the middle of his actually it's dinner time right now in New York. So,
right.
You've been listening to another episode of the Caribbean Property Investing Podcast. This one was special because you got some real life, straight from the horse's mouth, advice on how to go about, a joint venture arrangement, some of the key guardrails, some of the key qualities, maybe of partners, of a partnership. You also found out what potential joint venture partners would be looking for from you, in way of return, and so much more. Remember to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and of course at CaribbeanPropertyInvesting.com. We're about to wind up the season. We have one more show for you for 2021, so stay tuned for that. Until next time, remember, everyone needs somewhere to live. We might as well own yours. See you.
Bank of St. Lucia Visa credit card for everyday people, everyday moments.
To ruminate, to create your ultimate living space. And at Courts, you'll find what you need. Choose from our wide range of furniture, electronics, and accessories to complete your space. We're here and ready to assist. Give us a call to place your order. Shop online at shopcourts.com or visit us in store. So ruminate at Courts, bringing value home.
Congratulations and thank you for tuning in to the Caribbean's first property investing podcast. We want to help Caribbean people create wealth and achieve financial freedom through property investing. Our show provides general advice based on personal experiences and is for educational purposes only. For more information, resources, and past episodes, visit us at CaribbeanPropertyInvesting.com. Remember to click the subscribe button so you never miss a show. Let's go.